Most Starfleet recruits dreamed of sitting in the captain's chair one day, but only the best and brightest made it up through the ranks and got to take command of a starship. Or at least, that was the idea. While many Starfleet captains lived up to this ideal, a few had less than impressive performances, whether over the course of their careers or in particularly bad moments. Some simply weren't cut out to command a starship, others simply had one or two serious flaws that inhibited their leadership. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of Starfleet's worst such captains. Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host, Captain Jack, and let's get into this. If you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. Don't forget, to get early access to videos and support the development of our content, you can support Trek Central on Patreon. Click the link below to get access to some fantastic rewards. As always, please let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, then we want to hear about it. Okay, engage! We'll start with Captain Gabriel Lorca of the USS Discovery. Lorca, at first, appeared to simply be a captain who often acted out of alignment within the spirit of Starfleet. He was ruthless, sometimes callous, and he cared more about how his crew could be useful to him than he actually cared about their well-being. In the midst of Starfleet's brutal war with the Klingon Empire, Lorca's behaviour flew under the radar a little, passed off as just a devotion to winning an increasingly bloody war. Lorca was distrusted within Starfleet, as he was the sole survivor of his previous command, the USS Buran. He claimed to have destroyed the ship to spare his crew from Klingon torture, and instead of dying with his crew and going down with the ship, he escaped. This alone was out of keeping with Starfleet's values, but due to the desperation of the Klingon War, Lorca was given a new command, the USS Discovery. Unbeknownst to them, however, Lorca had his own agenda, and giving him this new command played right into it. Captain Lorca actually hailed from a mirror universe, where he had once been the right hand of a Terran Emperor. He had attempted to overthrow Emperor Georgiou in a coup d'etat, and when his coup failed, Lorca was forced to flee. He wound up in the Prime Universe, where he blended in, bided his time, and plotted his revenge. When this time came, he used Discovery's spore drive to return to the mirror universe, where he attempted to overthrow the Emperor once again. He was killed in this attempt, however, and Discovery came under the command of an actual Starfleet captain. Strictly speaking, Gabriel Lorca, or at least this version of him seen in Star Trek Discovery, was never truly Starfleet, but he's some excellent example of a bad Starfleet captain. But Starfleet tolerated his ruthlessness shows that his actions weren't completely beyond what they were willing to accept, at least at the time, which demonstrates just how dire things had become for them during the Klingon War. Next up, we have Commodore Matt Decker of the USS Constellation. For most of his career, Decker did a fine job. He was one of Starfleet's most decorative officers, in fact. But on his last mission, he well and truly blew it, which is what earns him a spot on this list. In 2267, the Constellation was on a routine survey mission when it encountered the Doomsday Machine, an enormous autonomous craft that systematically destroyed everything in its path, even objects as large as planets. The Constellation was crippled in the encounter, and, hoping to save his crew, Commodore Decker had beamed them all to one of the planets in the star system. However, the Doomsday Machine proceeded to destroy that planet, killing the Constellation's entire crew, and Decker was left to wallow his guilt aboard his now empty ship, the last remaining member of his crew. The Constellation was ultimately discovered by the USS Enterprise, which rescued Decker from the crippled vessel. Decker promptly usurped command of the Enterprise and sent it on a futile, guilt-fueled attack run against the Doomsday Machine. This left the Enterprise severely damaged. Captain Kirk, who had now been trapped on the Constellation, had to order Spock to remove Decker from command. But Decker wasn't willing to quit just yet. He stole one of the Enterprise's shuttles, which he used for a suicidal attack on the Doomsday Machine. Commodore Decker was killed in the process, but his attack did help highlight the machine's weakness, allowing the Enterprise to destroy it. Commodore Decker was probably a good captain most of the time, but he really unraveled at the end, and not only got his crew killed, but he also nearly killed the crew of the Enterprise in the process. Our next captain was also named Decker. Perhaps a sign that Starfleet recruits with that surname need to be given the Harry Kim treatment and kept an ensign forever. This was Captain Will Decker, a man destined to be forever eclipsed by James T. Kirk, who was both his predecessor and successor as captain of the Enterprise. Decker took command after Kirk was promoted to Admiral. He spent most of his time in the captain's chair overseeing an extensive refit. On the Enterprise's first mission, after this refit had concluded, Kirk retook command and demoted Decker to commander. Now, to be fair to Decker, he wasn't really treated fairly by Kirk. He was demoted for no real fault of his own, all because the Admiral wanted to command the Enterprise again and found a convenient excuse to do so. What really earns Decker a spot on this list was how he handled it, by putting his wounded pride before the mission, trying to undermine and second-guess Kirk's decision all through the V'Ger crisis. It's hardly a demonstration of the maturity a Starfleet captain should have, and it suggested it might have been a good thing that he got kicked out of a captain's chair for this specific mission. In the end, Decker decided to fuse with V'Ger to resolve the crisis peacefully, and command of the Enterprise returned to Kirk. That was probably a change for the better on hindsight. Our next bad captain was Captain Lawrence H. Stiles of the USS Excelsior. In canon media, Stiles might not seem too bad, even if he's more than a little arrogant and has an air of superiority. However, the expanded media confirms that Stiles' attitude was, in fact, a serious flaw, and that the arrogance he demonstrates in the search for Spock was really just the tip of the iceberg. Pompous and self-righteous, Stiles' ego caused problems before he even achieved the rank of captain. While still a lieutenant, Stiles was given temporary command of the Enterprise while Kirk was under investigation for his role in the Talon 4 disaster. Stiles, eager for a command of his own, attempted to sabotage Kirk's attempts to clear his name. When Kirk got off despite Stiles' efforts, he protested to his superiors, wanting to keep command of the Enterprise. He failed, but he still remained resentful of Kirk afterwards. Stiles' ego and attitude hadn't faded at all by the time he became captain. When he was given command of the Excelsior, the testbed for Starfleet's new transwarp drive, it stoked his ego all the more, as he believed he would soon break all of Kirk's speed records on the Enterprise. However, Kirk managed to undercut him once again. When James C. Kirk and his crew stole the Enterprise from space dock to go search for Spock, he had the Excelsior's transwarp drive sabotaged, leaving Stiles stranded when he attempted to pursue. All told, Captain Stiles was all bluster and ego, Stiles without substance. Some people apparently called him that. He was certainly a poor example for any Starfleet captain to emulate. Pompousness and ego are hardly good traits for any leader to actually have. One of the Starfleet captains seen in Star Trek Voyager was Captain Rudy Ransom. He was in command of the USS Equinox, a Nova-class science vessel. His starship, like the Intrepid-class USS Voyager, was pulled into the Delta Quadrant by an entity known as the Caretaker. While Voyager, under the command of Captain Janeway, held up their ideals of the Federation and Starfleet as they tried to make their way home, the crew of the Equinox kind of forgot about those after a series of incidents. After being stranded not only in the Delta Quadrant, but finding themselves in hostile space, Ransom pressed onto Earth. He lost 39 members of his crew while traversing an area of space controlled by the Cretonan Guard. They were an aggressive species. Over half the crew of the Equinox were dead. By 2376, the Equinox was severely damaged, and its dilithium supplies had been depleted. The crew had not eaten in 16 days. The Equinox had just enough power to enter orbit of an M-class world, where the inhabitants, the Ankari, introduced the crew to neurogenic lifeforms, beings who originated from an extra-dimensional realm, who the Ankari regard as spirits of good fortune. The crew scanned these lifeforms and realized they emitted high levels of antimatter. Throwing the Starfleet rules and Federation ethics out the window, Captain Ransom and the crew began to experiment on the lifeforms and convert their remains into a source of fuel. Yeah, pretty gruesome, I know. In augmenting the warp drive, the Equinox crew faced the possibility of returning to the Alpha Quadrant in mere months. However, the aliens pushed back and constantly attacked the starship. The Equinox was saved from destruction by the crew of the USS Voyager, another Starfleet vessel that had been stranded in the Delta Quadrant by the Caretaker. Ransom and his crew initially attempted to conceal their actions from Voyager's crew, but when they were eventually discovered, Ransom was confronted by Captain Janeway. Ransom attempted to justify his actions by quoting Starfleet Regulation 3, paragraph 12, which stated, "In the event of imminent destruction, a Starfleet captain is authorized to preserve the lives of his crew by any justifiable means."
Starfleet Regulation 3, paragraph 12. In the event of imminent destruction, a captain is authorized to preserve the lives of his crew by any justifiable means.
I doubt that protocol covers mass murder.
In my judgment, it did.
Unacceptable.
While it seems he was never really evil, Ransom was driven to make these bad choices by the situation he found himself in. It seems that near his death, his controversial and criminal decisions had weighed heavily on his consciousness. Ransom was prepared to surrender to Captain Janeway of Voyager. However, his first officer mutinied against him, taking the Equinox in an attempt to destroy Voyager. Ransom was able to beam off the crew members to Voyager and remained on the Equinox to get as far away from the ship before the warp core breached. What do you think about him? Was Captain Ransom a totally bad Star Trek captain? Speaking of ego, our last bad captain was Solok, the captain of the USS Tecumseh. Captain Solok was a Vulcan of a long rivalry with fellow Starfleet captain Benjamin Sisko, which stretched all the way back to when the two were at the Academy. From his cadet days to his time in command, Solok was open in his belief that not only were emotions a weakness, but also that Vulcans were superior to the more emotional species, such as humans. At the Academy, Solok once picked a fight with Sisko, first debating the merit of logic versus emotions, before moving on to a wrestling match, which Solok easily won. He never let Sisko live this down, and took the incident as evidence of Vulcan superiority. Over the years, he published 5 psychological papers and over a dozen papers on humans versus Vulcan physical performance, all of which at least mention the wrestling match. Even during the height of the Dominion War, now Captain Solok was still firm in his belief in Vulcan superiority, and when the Tacumba was sent to Deep Space Nine for repairs, he attempted to humiliate Sisko yet again by challenging him to a baseball game. Solok and his team, the Logicians, won, but Sisko had a good time anyway and celebrated afterwards, irritating Solok, who ultimately failed to get a rise out of his long-time rival. While all of this is strictly personal, it reflects on Solok as a person and what kind of leader he was. For all his claims of being a superior, logical Vulcan, Solok was extraordinarily petty, not to mention egotistical and condescending, and he had a rather illogical inability to let go of the past. His belief in outright Vulcan superiority also did not align with the egalitarian principles of Starfleet. Solok might have performed well at his job, but he still didn't really make a good captain, especially not in Starfleet. Now, we could have put Captain Edward Jellicoe in here, but is he a bad Star Trek captain, or is he just a by-the-book officer? Look, that episode of The Next Generation was a bit of a tough one for some people to watch, and he certainly came off as a bit of an arse. But you decide, and let us know in the comments, and maybe we'll revisit Jellicoe in another YouTube video. So that's a look at some of Starfleet's worst captains. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore, and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. Don't forget, you can also support Trek Central via Patreon using the link below. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.